Howdy folks, welcome back. In a previous video, I described the Sudo utility and I described the advantages of using it to perform your administrative jobs instead of logging in as the root user all the time. And I'll link to that video at the end of this video so you'll be able to watch it then. But when I made that video, I was looking at things from the aspect of an enterprise user, an enterprise Linux administrator. And so I described the ways in which using that Sudo utility can simplify administration for Linux servers in an enterprise setting. But in the comments section of that video, somebody asked a question about whether or not Sudo is good for home users and whether or not a home user would be interested in using that Sudo utility. Well, the answer, of course, is yes to both those questions. Sudo is good for home users, and the home user definitely wants to use it. There are a few different reasons why. For one thing, it's just plain old common sense security. If you surf the web while you're logged in as a root user, you can open yourself up to malware infections and browser-based attacks. Those types of attacks are going to be a lot easier to accomplish if you're logged in as the root user. But if you're logged in as a normal unprivileged user, then it's going to be a lot harder for those different attacks to be successful and for those infections to be successful. And this is one reason why Windows is so prone to these types of attacks. Windows is prone to virus infections and everything else because, well, partly because Windows user accounts usually have admin privileges, and by default, there is no password required in order to perform an administrative job from a Windows account. It's also handy for keeping family members from changing your settings or you're just generally screwing things up. So if you're busy at your little home office or just doing general web surfing or whatever, and you get up to go to the kitchen to grab a sandwich and a cup of coffee, then you don't have to worry about one of your kids coming in and changing your settings. And I know about this. I have a family member who actually went through this one time. But by using Sudo and logging in just as a normal user and then using Sudo in order to perform your administrative tasks that you need to do, then it will prevent your children or other family members from coming in and screwing up your account settings for you. Also, if you create non-Sudo user accounts for other members of the family to log into that machine and you set your permissions on your home directory so that nobody but you can get into it, then your other family members cannot get into your stuff in order to see your different private files. Also, there's the question of safety. By using Sudo to run some sort of an administrative type command and then having to take a few seconds to enter that password in order to run that command, it gives you a few seconds to think about those dangerous commands that you may enter. And you got to remember that, like, for example, when you delete files in the command line, there's no trash bin there from which you can undelete. So the question then is how to set up user account with Sudo privileges. Well, that depends upon which distro that you're talking about. If you're running Ubuntu and all members of the Ubuntu family, and that's going to include Linux Mint, then the person who installs the operating system is automatically set up with full Sudo privileges. So you don't have to do anything with members of the Ubuntu family, and this is something that they pioneered. The Ubuntu developers were the first ones who created a distro that would automatically set the person who did the installation up with full Sudo privileges and did not have you create a root user password. It was their design to not even have the root account enabled. For Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 and all of its derivatives such as CentOS 7, Scientific Linux 7, and also members of the Fedora family, the person who performs the operating system installation can make himself or herself the administrator with full sudo privileges just by putting a check mark in that Make This User Administrator box when he or she gets to the screen to create the user account. You can also create a password for the root user, but that's optional. I generally don't even bother with that now. But then you have other distros that still don't do any of this for you. You have other distros, for example, like Debian, that require you to go in and set up sudo privileges after you get the operating system installed. So in general, what you need to do to accomplish that is to boot up on the machine for the first time, log into a root command prompt with the root user password, and then you would add yourself to either the sudo group or the wheel group, depending upon which distro that you're working with. And then you would configure your vsudo to activate either the sudo or the wheel group privileges. So let's take a look at how to do this. So as you can see, I am now logged into a Debian virtual machine. This is a brand new installation of Debian, so I have not yet set myself up with sudo privileges. Now, if you're not sure whether or not you have sudo privileges after you've just installed an operating system, you can enter the groups command. And if you see that you are not a member of either the sudo group or the wheel group, then you probably don't have sudo privileges. You also want to take note of which other groups that you are a member. Some Linux distros, when you create your own user account, will add you to a lot of these other different groups automatically, and other distros don't require that. So when you add yourself to either the sudo group or to the wheel group, you want to make sure that you do it in such a way that you will not wipe yourself out of the membership of these other groups. And you can also do like sudo fdisk-l, for example. Enter your own normal password. And if you get that message, that also indicates that you are not in the sudoers file and that you do not have sudo privileges. So now, to give yourself sudo privileges, you have to know which group to which you want to add your account. So the first thing you're going to do is do su space dash and enter the root password that you created when you installed the operating system. And then do vsudo. And when you go down here, right here, you will see that line there, that %sudo. That means that you have to add yourself to the sudo group in order to have full sudo privileges. On a Red Hat style machine or a lot of other different non-Debian, non-Ubuntu type distros, you have to add yourself to the wheel group instead. But in either case, you can come in here into this vsudo utility and it will show you. If you see sudo in there for the group, then add yourself to the sudo group. If you see wheel for the group, then add yourself to the wheel group. Also, on your Red Hat type operating systems, you will see that this line for the wheel group is actually commented out like so. So you would have to come in there then and delete that £sign and that leading space and then save the file. Also, on this particular machine on Debian, the vsudo utility uses the nano text editor interface in order to do this editing. On your Red Hat operating systems, it uses the vtext editor interface. So, but either way, you accomplish the same thing. So let's go ahead and save this. I'll do Control X to save it and exit. And yes, I want to save it. And then I will add myself to the sudo group. I'm going to add myself to the sudo group with the user mod utility. So I'm going to do user mod dash uppercase G sudo followed by my username. Now here's where you have to be careful. On other Linux distros like the Red Hat distros, this is all you need because those distros don't automatically add you to all those other groups that I just showed you. So on Debian, it does add you to those other groups. And if I were to just hit the enter key right now, that would remove my membership from those other groups. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go over here and put a dash lowercase a like so. And now when I hit enter, I should be able to do this and see that I'm now in all of those groups. And I am. Good. Okay, so I can now exit from the root command prompt, exit from there, and then I will come down here and log out. And then I will log back in. And when I come back in here and open up my terminal again, I should be able to do a sudo fdisk-l. And I no longer get the error message. I will now enter my own password. I will not enter the root user password. I will enter my own password instead. And that's all there is to it. Now, this little message that comes up here will only come up the first time that you use sudo. It will not come up every time that you use sudo. And also, you want to be careful because there is a 5-minute timer. If you enter one sudo command and then enter another sudo command within the next 5 minutes, then you will not be asked to enter your password. So that's something you want to keep in mind as well before you get up and walk away from your terminal. But if you do walk away from your terminal and you want to make sure that nobody comes in and messes with your stuff, just go ahead and close down the terminal window like so, and you'll be good. Because the next time you open a terminal window, the sudo will not be there. Okay, and that's all there is to it. And just remember, as I said, on most of your distros, you're going to add yourself to the wheel group, but on Debian distros, Ubuntu distros, add yourself to the sudo group instead. So that's all for this video. I thank you for watching. If I've helped you out in any way, and if you like the videos, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you around later.